Executive and Group Financial Officer Update, item 7. Please go to that. Jim, it's yours.
Thank you, Mayor. Good morning, councillors. I'd like to update on a few items this morning before I hand over to Peter for an update on the finances. Firstly, on the government reforms, and within that, firstly, affordable water. The Finance and Expenditure Select Committee reported back on the Water Services Legislation Bill and the Water Services Economic Efficiency and Consumer Protection Bill on the 8th of June, recommending a number of changes to the bill, which was subsequently introduced to Parliament on Friday the 16th of June. The bill requires that Northland and Auckland Water Services entity to be fully established by the 1st of July 2024. The bill also created the Water Services Funding Agency, similar to LGFA, for these entities. Staff are reviewing the details of the Select Committee recommendations to assess whether Council's key submission points have been reflected or not. Potential implications for the Council are being looked into, including possible requirements for Council to bill on behalf of the entity and the costs associated with that for some period after the 1st of July 2024. A summary briefing will be provided to elected members soon, and Megan is here and available if there are any questions specifically in relation to the affordable water reform. But as I say, there will be an update coming. The Future for Local Government Reform report was published during the week. It's a comprehensive report, and councillors, I'm sure, will not have had the opportunity to read all of it. There are 17 recommendations grouped into 5 themes: embedding local government's purpose and well-being focus more strongly in legislation, systems renewal, funding and financing, strengthening local democracy and leadership, and growing authentic Tītiriti-based partnerships. And as I say, there are recommendations within each of those 5 themes. Of course, the question will be what next with regard to the recommendations of that report. Our team are working through the final report. As I say, it's comprehensive, over 800 pages of detail and supporting technical reports, and will provide a summary briefing as soon as possible to elected members. I want to talk about one in particular legal case that was decision was issued in the last week or so. On the 12th of June, actually, the High Court issued its decision on the $87 million contract claim brought by Westgate Town Centre Limited and the New Zealand Retail Property Group against Auckland Council and Auckland Transport as successors to Waitakere City Council over the development of the Westgate Town Centre, an issue that dates back about 20 years to 2003. The decision was publicly released on the 19th of June. The plaintiffs claimed that the Council and Auckland Transport breached express and implied contractual undertakings for the development of Westgate. The judgment is over 200 pages long, but the key points are that the plaintiffs have not made out any of the contractual breaches alleged against Council or AT. There is no basis for the award of any damages. The claim was dismissed in its entirety. The Council and Auckland Transport are entitled to costs. New Zealand Retail Property Group have a right to appeal the case, which expires on the 10th of July, and our work in relation to any outstanding matters is either complete or in the process of being completed, including things such as Auckland Transport undertaking the work on the Westgate bus interchange, which is expected to be completed in 25-26. It's a shovel-ready project. Significant land use and development programs are underway in the northwest, which are reported through your committee of the whole. So work continues, but from a legal perspective, as I say, the High Court found in favour of Council and Auckland Transport in what has been a long-running case of pretty significant risk in terms of value. It makes the point. I make the point though that Auckland Council is often in a situation where we have to defend work that we've done or are doing, or the decisions that we've made. It's not very often that we bring a case of claim against anyone, but it's often that we have to defend a claim against Council. And we have a really strong track record thanks to the capability of our legal team and the partnerships that we've formed, with a success record that's very strong, including not just in this case, but recently, as you'll know, the APTR case and a number of others, especially in relation to water tightness claims and other things. Of course, there are still some outstanding cases, as there always will be, but it does speak to the calibre of the legal team that we've had the privilege of having as part of our council family. I want to touch on, for a moment, a number of awards the council and its entities have received. We share this news with our team through quarterly performance reports, updates from me, and we'll provide you a summary of some of the collective achievements and awards as part of the final 2023 annual performance report. But a few highlights of awards over the last month. The Whangatau and Martins Bay holiday parks both retained their Qualmark 4-star Silver Sustainable Tourism Business Awards. The Walmsley and Underwood Park, Totara Park and North Shore Memorial Park Cemetery and Crematorium have joined 7 other Auckland Council parks as being recognised as some of the best green spaces in the world in the annual International Green Flag Awards. Certainly should be proud of that. The Building Consents team have received 2 awards at the Building Officials Institute of New Zealand Annual Excellence Awards. The Organisational Commitment to Community Service and Response Award, acknowledging the Council's response following the floods and cyclone, and their support to our communities under sort of extreme pressure, was one of the awards. The other award was the Unsung Hero Award, and was received by Jeff Farrenson, who I'm sure a lot of you will know. He's the head of our field surveying team in Building Consents. The award recognised Jeff's quiet determination, dedication and commitment to his work, the industry and our communities. Jeff played a key role in responding to the extreme weather events that have impacted our region. Our Kauri dieback advisor, Stuart Layton, won the Recreation Aotearoa's New Zealand Parks Person of the Year Award for 2023. That's a great thing. During the week, the Ports of Auckland were awarded the Collaboration Award at the Workplace Health and Safety Awards for 2023, recognising their collaboration between the Port, MUNS and the stevedoring unions and the development of the stevedoring code of practice. Great to see that Ports is coming a long way in that respect. And Auckland Council itself was awarded the Engagement Award at the New Zealand Workplace Health and Safety Awards 2023, recognising the work done to improve health and safety outcomes across Council. Again, a fantastic recognition of the work that our team have done over the last couple of years. When two or so years ago we were looking for examples where we could learn from others, we are now being approached by other organisations who are wanting to learn from the work that we've done in many of those areas of our work. So there's lots of things going on. Often we're very focused on the problems that we've got to solve, but it's nice to know that the work that's being done is being recognised in various ways across New Zealand.
Well done.
Let me hand over to Peter.
Thank you, Jim. So this continues the trend of previous months, and we have the end of year deep dive coming up shortly as well. And it is also the shortest day, and as such, I don't think I'll dive too deeply into a list of numbers and variances for you, but I will cover some of the highlights and of course be around for questions afterwards. So if we look at the Auckland Council Group for the 11 months to 31 May 2023, capital investment year to date 2291 million against a budget of 2375, so delivery of 96% of budget. Now obviously the numbers are important, but the highlights are really what is delivered within that. One I'll call out is the Central Interceptor project. The tunnel's progressing well. There's 6,100 metres tunnelled to date, with all 16 sites now active and major works being carried out across the project. And there was an open home or open day at Mount Albert last Saturday. Direct revenue was 4% favourable to budget with the same drivers as last month, with unders in public transport, water care, interconnection charges and overages or over-exceeding in water and wastewater charges, port storage and demurrage, Aote Whakakatahi operating subsidies and TAU fees, user charges and operating subsidies from Project Activate, which was not budgeted for. Direct operating expenditure was 1% unfavourable to budget, same drivers as last month again, and the unfavourable variance is really driven by the weather events and the OPEX related to that. One other update which is new this month, and that's a non-direct revenue. This was favourable by 191 million above budget, and that's primarily due to the recognition of the very generous gift of the Robertson Art Collection, which was valued at 177 million during May. Yeah, quite a remarkable gift. Net debt is always a focus, of course. Net debt increased by 872 million year to date, so is just a tick under 12 billion, and of course that is used to fund capital projects. A wee bit of context on that. So the net debt balance as at the end of May is in line with the year-end budget. It's about 19 million variance from that. The book value of debt at 31 May does include 229 million of unrealised foreign exchange rate losses on debt in other currencies that are converted to New Zealand dollars. Now, these are purely fair value book adjustments that we have to do for statutory reporting. Does not mean we've borrowed more money or that we have to pay more back, because we've hedged all these transactions at the date that we enter into them. So we've locked in the exchange rates, but we have to report it. So a further impact in this space is that we have received less capital funding revenues that go towards funding our capital, and these include development contributions, capital subsidies and asset sales, and they were under budget as a group by 112 million, and so we had to take on more borrowings to fund the capital projects. This was all offset by working capital movements, and that's mainly due to the receipt of rates revenue that we had in May 23. So those are the key items, although I would like to do a quick update on Auckland International Airport Limited. So firstly, I will state I have only publicly available information in front of me, so there is no other information that I am bringing into this forum. I'm going to refer to the budget calculations. So they were based on a share price at 17 April. Now, we did talk about at that time that share prices were subject to market movement, and in fact the realised price from any sale would be different due to a number of factors, and we can see that that has been occurring. There's been some market movements both ways since the middle of April, and an update to the airport company's dividend policy as well. These movements do not fundamentally change the financial assessment of the decision that was made, and I'll walk you through that. In particular, if we assume that the change in share price is reflected in a sale process, and again, no public information, nothing other than public information here, then the interest savings would be less. However, the foregone dividends is now less as well. So there is a slight net benefit from these offsets. I will stress that we need to maintain confidentiality on the process, and given that the decision has been made and the teams are in execution mode, there's not much more I can say about that process at this time, but rest assured you will be brought up to speed when I am able to do so. So with that, I will pass across to Gary Blick and remain by his side until the end.
Thank you, Peter. Kia ora koutou, and good morning, everyone. Your Worship, Councillors, brief update on the macroeconomic context over the last month or so since the 23rd of May meeting. Many of you will be aware the Reserve Bank increased the official cash rate by 25 basis points from 5.25% to 5.5% on the 24th of May, and that decision was consistent with the bank's own indications of the near-term path. Some economists had picked a higher increase due to strong data on migration and a looser fiscal stance at Budget 2023, but the bank's view is that economic activity appears to be cooling, and with the prior increases in the interest rate interest rates from the OCR being higher, working through the economy. They've cited an easing of consumer spending and in residential construction activity, and also business investment intentions. The bank also signalled that it expects 5.5% to be the peak in this cycle, and that no further tightening is needed at this stage, although they remain watchful. They expect CPI inflation to return back to target within a band of 1 to 3%. It will take time, not until the second half of next year, and so by the end of this year, the forecast is for inflation to still be relatively elevated at 4.9%. Wanted to draw to your attention, data on GDP was released last week, showed a decrease of 0.1%. That follows a contraction of 0.7% in the prior quarter for December, and of course that quarter I just mentioned of negative 1.1% is for the March quarter this year. So technically that is referred to as a recession using the commonly understood definition of 2 consecutive quarters of contraction. But of course, the latest increase or decrease is very small and is subject to revision, so by the slimmest of margins. I think the key takeaway is that annual inflation is sitting at 2.2%, and it had been forecast to be around 3% by the Reserve Bank, and so pretty clear signs that activity is slowing, and I guess the Reserve Bank would be comfortable with that pause in the OCR at this stage. Also, from an Auckland perspective, just draw your attention that data releases last week show house prices have stabilised after a period of rapid decline, of course following the rapid increase in the wake of low interest rates at the outset of the pandemic. Prices, or median price anyway, is still above the pre-COVID-19 levels, and affordability relative to incomes remains challenging for many. The data out last week also shows some upward pressure on Auckland rental prices. That's likely due to the rebound and inward migration that we're seeing at a national level flowing into Auckland as well, particularly since those border restrictions were removed in August last year. So I'll leave it there and be available to take questions. Thank you.
You finished? Okay, thanks Jim and Peter for that update. I appreciated your comment about the Auckland Airport dividend policy change, which I predicted with no more than public knowledge. The future of local, that reinforces some of the reasons for our decision to sell some of the shares a few weeks ago. It makes the case even stronger. The Future of Local Government report made some interesting suggestions about how local government should be funded and the unfunded mandates that we get given by central government. Not all of it is brilliant, but I look forward to the staff advice coming to elected members when they've ploughed their way through all several hundred pages of that. With that, I'd like to move we receive these reports. If I have a seconder, thank you, Councillor Fletcher. That we receive the information provided in the report and the monthly things. The motion's on the screen. Does any have any questions? Councillor Fletcher is first up, followed by Councillor Turner.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Jim, for outlining the situation and the determination to seek costs. I want to ask you a question based on my long involvement with this situation that has caused me a huge amount of grief, and that is as Norska that has become Westgate. From the formation of the council, there had been some last-minute contracts entered into by the Legacy Waitakere Council, and that was a source of some real concern. I'm being very careful in picking my words here. There were whistleblowers, there were accusations of conflict of interest that were unresolved, and it was a difficult time for those of us who wanted to get full disclosure on those matters. It culminated in me taking a notice of motion, and I think some of our senior staff that are here were present at that time, and it was extremely difficult to get engagement from the council at that time on this matter and the contractual situations that had existed with that company. It culminated in an Auditor General inquiry that was undertaken. That decision was made back in about February 2015. But there were continuing matters of conflict that were unresolved. the situation that evolved was entirely predictable, and it has cost this council dearly. And therefore, I feel very personally driven to have you do everything you possibly can to seek some reimbursements of the costs of not just something that has occurred over the last year or two, that has gone on since the formation of this council. And I would like to know what the costs are, if anyone has bothered to capture them all on what it has cost to date. And if ever there is an example of poor conduct, conflict and mismanagement and lack of disclosure, it has to be over that. I do not want to cast aspersions on any individual, but that we allowed it to get to this point is just beyond any kind of sense of reasonableness. So, Jim, I'd really like, can you tell me how much it's cost the council to date?
Councillor, no, obviously I can't. Thank you for the question, though. Obviously, I take your point on notice, and I will reflect with the team on the point that you've made. It's a situation, as I said in my update, that goes back 20 years, and so by definition, there's 20 years of potential kind of argument, speculation, conflict, etc.
But with respect, the main contracts were signed on the eve of the formation of the super city. So that was 2010. They were the contracts that were, I think, some of those that were, but I agree that the formation of the project was back that long, but it was just prior, on the dawn, if you like, of the formation of Auckland Council, that many of the problems evolved.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. Let me take the point that you've made on notice. Thank you.
Of course, the award of costs goes to a formula in the courts, which is always disappointing.
It is, but there will be
but
some
I
measure of
get your point.
satisfaction that justice has prevailed.
I accept it. Councillor Turner.
Sorry, thank you. Just maybe naive questions, and I was trying to catch up, but I can't. So you talked about over $100 million worth of art being gifted to the council, and am I right? That gets added to our asset, to the bottom line asset total, correct? So it has, although minuscule, an effect on our debt to income ratio?
Zero, because it doesn't impact on debt or revenue.
But what I mean is we could borrow against that value?
Not particularly, no.
Okay, thank you.
I'm reasonably sure there'll be something in there saying we can't flog them. Councillor Walker, please.
Sure. I just want to speak
That's right.
further to the gift of the Robertsons, and while we may have acknowledged that gift in the past, I just put the question as to whether or not there's a possibility to acknowledge it again. It's in the minutes, did you say? Did someone make a comment?
Right. I said bring them in and thank them.
He's dead, Julian Roberts.
He's
but
actually
He's gotta be
dead, so you
beneficial.
can't do that. So,
his wife Josie is alive. So I just. Huh?
no, they're both passed. I know them
Okay.
quite well.
Well, even so, there are family members that are still around. I just think it would be useful to acknowledge the gift. It's probably, with the exception of Sir George Grey, probably one of the most significant gifts we've ever received.
No problem with that.
Okay, thanks.
Okay.